colleagues, I now reconvene the general session. Will the recording secretary please call the roll?
Danette Brown. Catherine Williams Brown.
Here.
Jose Cardenas.
Here.
Cheryl Copton.
Here.
Juan Cruz.
Here.
Christopher Davis.
Here.
Michael Dilatori.
Present.
Marisol Dilatori Escobedo.
Here.
Anna Marie Francois. Makita Gwynno-Shire.
Present.
Megan Gross.
Present.
Johanna Harwick.
Present.
Susan Aradia. Bonnie Clapp.
Present.
Ira Litt.
Present.
Monica Martinez.
Here.
Shireen Parbury.
Present.
David Simmons.
Here.
Kimberly Wise Smith.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Before we move to the Educator Preparation Committee, I understand someone's having a birthday in the house. Does the commission want to give a shout out to Commissioner Hartwig or even sing? I'm not starting that from this position. I don't hear anything.
Let's sing. Let's sing.
All right, go
I'll do
ahead,
a solo.
start.
Let's sing. Ready?
Yep.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Johanna. Happy birthday to you.
Johanna, thank you for spending your day with us. I now recess the general session and move to the Educator Preparation Committee. Commissioner Martinez, will you please reconvene the committee?
I will. It starts off as a little rowdy bunch. For everyone in the audience, just to know that there are donuts up there by the coffee pot, and everyone is welcome to celebrate Commissioner Hartwig's birthday. And she brought donuts for everyone as part of the celebration. So feel free to have some donuts. But I would like to reconvene the Educator Preparation Committee. We have one item today. We're going to start with item and end with item 2D, potential future options for commission examinations, being presented by David DeGeer and Mike Taylor. This is an information item. Mr. Geer, will you please begin?
Good morning, Commissioners. This agenda item describes future potential options for the Commission to consider for commission examinations after the current contracts expire in October 2025. It also provides an update on reading instruction examinations used in other states that may be considered in the future as an option for teachers who will continue to need access to a standardized examination to meet California teaching credential requirements. The Education Code requires the Commission to administer a basic skills proficiency test, subject matter examinations, examinations on which a teacher can demonstrate competence in the knowledge and skills necessary for effective teaching of English learners, and an exam to demonstrate competence in reading instruction. The Commission also has an examination for proficiency in the Administrative Services Standards. Since 2007, the Commission has had a single mega contract with Evaluation Systems Group of Pearson that covers most examinations, the CBEST, CSET, CTEL, and RICO. Because of the long length of the contract and the fact that there have been 9 amendments to the mega contract, California's Department of General Services notified Commission staff earlier this year that the mega contract can no longer be amended. That contract ends in October 2025. Assembly Bill 130, which was passed in 2021, may have an impact on the Commission's examinations because it created new options for educators to demonstrate their competency through coursework and degree majors, both in basic skills and subject matter knowledge. In addition to reducing the number of exams that will be taken in the future, AB 130 also changed the depth of subject matter knowledge that candidates must demonstrate. The changing policy context and demand for standardized teacher licensure examinations, and the fact that the current mega contract for the Commission examinations can no longer be extended, provides the Commission with an opportunity to consider how to best organize standardized educator examinations for the future. Mike Taylor, our assessment consultant, will now go through some of the options for the Commission.
So there's really basically 3 options here.
and they're all pretty simple. The first is we can continue doing what we've been doing, and that is developing custom examinations for California educators that are aligned to the California student standards. We could identify some possible usable, valid, reliable, what we call off-the-shelf assessments or national assessments that are used by other states. Or we could use a combination of those two things, depending on what the particular situation is for each of the commission's exams. And you'll recall there's a lot of exams. I'll talk a little bit about each option. Under option number one, we'll talk a little bit about what we do with exams currently. So we could continue doing that. Customizing exams for California, making sure they're aligned with the adopted student standards and the commission's SMRs. In this case, the commission would maintain a lot more control over the exams like you do now, because the commission develops and approves the SMRs, and the custom exams measure those SMRs. Development of our examinations is a multi-stage process that's outlined on page 3 of the agenda item. And we've shown you this list before. There's 20 steps in it. And I just want to highlight today that there's several of these steps that involve the commission act, like we're here today with the action of the full commission. So particularly step 5, step 7, and step 19 are places where we always come back to the commission when we're developing our custom assessments in each of them. In fact, there's other places where we've come to the commission as well at other times in the past. We brought test designs to the commission to review. And recently, I think for our theater and dance items, we brought some sample questions one time for the commission to look at while we were in that development effort. And more recently, we've been doing some standard setting reasonableness studies where we've come back to you in a step after step 19 and 20 on this process. Think of it as step 21, just to ask you to reaffirm some of those cut scores. The advantages of having customized examinations are, of course, like we said, they're tightly aligned with the TK-12 student standards here in California, and the commission maintains control of the content, the types of items that are used, and the test design. And then teams of California credentialed teachers are a big part of that process as well, as you saw on the list. They review all the draft SMRs and examination items and other materials, as well as a bias review of California educators that review, a bias review panel, of California educators who review the same materials. And then we convene a panel of educators to recommend a passing standard for each of the exams to the commission. In addition to that, for our current exams, California educators also work to score the constructed response items. And so this has kind of been a big deal in the field. It helps create a little buy-in out in the field with people. And it really helps improve the validity of the examinations, because the people who are hold the credentials that the exams are used to authorize are the people who are working on scoring these things. They're doing all of the reviews. They're looking at the SMRs, right? So it's a real direct relationship between the people doing the job the exam is used for certification for and the content that the commission expects them to know. Some disadvantages of custom exams, as are outlined in the item, is of course the cost and the speed at which they can be regenerated. So the cost for completing our custom exams have been recouped by our examination contractor in the form of test fees. So the test fees that candidates pay traditionally needs to cover the entire cost of the assessment system. And while this is true for national tests as well, it's usually there's an economy of scale built in because there's more people taking these tests in more states. And so the fees are generally a little bit lower. Table 1 in the item on page 5 shows some examples of what different test fees may be for our custom tests and also for the some of the more common off-the-shelf tests. And we should note, and it's noted in the item, that this isn't a complete picture of a comparison between these tests, because they're not, the test designs and items aren't necessarily the same. They just sort of cover some of the same domains. For example, our custom assessments, our CSETs, generally have more constructed response questions than the national counterpart equivalents do. A disadvantage to customized exams is that it's often difficult to find the number of volunteer educators that we need for the panels that I just discussed. And we've had last few years, particularly with the pandemic and things, it's been even more tricky to find people who can take a day away from teaching and meet with us to discuss all of these examination development issues. Option 2 in the item would be exploring the use of some of these national exams that are published and out there being used by other states. There's 2 companies generally that sell and administer these exams. It's Evaluation Systems Group of Pearson, who's our current exams contractor, and ETS, who the Commission's worked with in the past. The advantages of these national tests include lower registration costs, as we talked about. They're available year-round generally, and while a lot of our exams are available year-round, there are a number of low-incidence C-sets and things that are administered just in testing windows sometimes that candidates find a little inconvenient. Also, for the national exams, the testing companies that make those generally have the resources to develop a little bit larger item pool for these exams. So they'll tend to have multiple forms that are refreshed more often than the forms that we work with on our custom exams. A disadvantage of the national exams is that they're not really closely tied to California's K-12 state standards, but that's, there's in the world where, for the major content areas, most of the states are using things like NGSS for science or Common Core or things like that. And California's standards in those areas are based on those national standards. So it could be that the national tests aren't that far off from California state standards and what they measure. And the panels that review and develop those exams obviously aren't all California teachers, but it may be possible that if we work out a contract for some of these national exams for use here in California, that we can get some California educators placed on these panels in these same sorts of positions for the national exam. Option 3 would be a combination of these 2 approaches, possibly adopting some national exams for some content areas or purposes for some exams, and otherwise developing custom assessments where that seems appropriate. And I'm going to turn it back over to David to talk to you about RECA.
Thank you, Mike. So Commission staff have already started exploring some national examinations in the area of reading instruction. Education Code Section 44283.3 provides that teachers who were not able to take the Reading Instruction Competence Assessment, RECA, during the COVID because of testing center closures have the option to complete that requirement to clear their credential through successful completion of an assessment used by another state that meets the requirements of Senate Bill 488 if the RECA is no longer available. And we have, as we presented in June, we're planning on retiring the RECA in June of 2025 and replacing it with the Literacy Performance Assessment. In addition to these teachers, there are some credential candidates who will always need an examination for reading instruction. So again, because the Commission will be retiring RECA and transitioning to that Literacy Performance Assessment, we've identified several examinations as possible options, and we've listed those in the item. We will be working with the exam developers over the next several months to determine which ones meet the requirements outlined in Senate Bill 488, and will provide an update to the Commission at a future meeting. So, staff requests that the Commission discuss these options and provide us some direction. So questions for the Commission to possibly consider. Does the Commission wish to continue with examinations that are customized for California and are based very closely on California's adopted student content standards, such as CBEST, CSET, and continue to update these examinations as needed? Or would the Commission like staff to identify potentially usable, valid, and reliable national examinations that are used by other states, which align with the adopted student content standards? Would the Commission consider the use of a combination of national and customized California examinations based on the availability and suitability of examination options for particular content areas? And we will be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Great. Thank you both for that clear explanation of the choices in front of us and the issues behind them. We're now going to open for public comment. If there are members of the public that like to give a presentation and you're here, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card. If you're on Zoom, just click the raised hand icon. And if you're participating through phone, do *9. And the recording secretary will call on you. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
Angelica Salazar.
Thank you. And just be sure to turn on your microphone. There you go.
Thank you. Good morning, CTC commissioners and staff. I'm Angelica Salazar with Public Advocates. This week, we issued you a letter and published an op-ed in EdSource urging you not to pursue a new contract for the continued administration of the racially and culturally biased CBEST. Our letter and op-ed describe the many ways the test is not an appropriate measure for ensuring educators possess basic skills. It's time to reconcile with the CBEST highly political origin story, as well as this commission's own efforts during the AME v. California litigation to save the test. The CBEST has always been more an exam designed to weed people out of the profession than a job-related exam that fairly measures future educator competence. The CBEST has been devastating for many thousands of teacher candidates of color who have been deterred from training for the profession. This standardized exam has been at least one significant reason why we face a long-term teacher shortage and a forever shortage of BIPOC and multilingual teachers. I'm a former teacher and took the CBEST 18 years ago myself. I recall describing it at best as an inequitable hoop I had to jump through on the way to teaching. The other requirements in my teacher prep program, observations by my mentor teachers, and performance-based assessments were much more relevant and meaningful. Instead of perpetuating this racially discriminatory exam, you can start the process to eliminate the CBEST and its adverse impact. First, we call on the Commission to publicly release the long-suppressed study of the test's cultural and racial bias that my colleague, John Affelt, wrote about in his EdSource piece. We also urge you to seek legislative approval to eliminate the CBEST exam requirements and greatly expand implementation of the coursework option so that it becomes a primary, if not exclusive, means for demonstrating relevant basic skills competencies. Please count on us to support you with these efforts, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for the public comment. Recording secretary, are there others?
Aaron Giddens.
Good morning.
Hello, commissioners. I'm Erin Giddens. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a 5th grade teacher in Southern California, La Habra. I'm representing the 300,000 members of the California Teachers Association. So, CTA believes candidates should be able to demonstrate basic skills proficiency and subject matter competence through multiple means. So we applaud the recent actions taken by the legislator to ensure the future teachers who have completed that through a rigorous coursework, that they don't have to be subjected to discriminatory, duplicative, and costly standardized tests. So we applaud that effort. We believe any national off-the-shelf evaluation used as an option for demonstrating basic skills or subject matter competence must be thoroughly vetted by classroom teachers. Among these assessments of similar quality, make sure that the least expensive, least costly option is selected for the candidates. And further, while CTC may develop and maintain standardized tests such as the TPA, CSET, and CBEST, the California Teachers Association believes the role of an independent credentialing standard board is to review and approve and evaluate teacher ed programs, establish procedures for developing and applying the standards, award credentials to applicants, set and administer the budget, adopt the rules, regulation, and procedures, conduct research for teacher education and retention and the causes of attrition into the profession, and conduct hearings and hire executive class. Where the commission finds opportunities to reallocate human and financial resources away from the development and maintenance of these standardized tests and back toward these core functions, we believe it should. So thank you.
Recording secretary, any
Additional requests for public comment.
nothing on Zoom or phone? Okay. The public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have questions or comments on this item? And again, you may want to refer to the last page of the item where it has specific questions directed to the commission. Yeah, Commissioner Simmons.
Okay, I have some technical questions that because I did test preparation for like 25 years, and I was on several of the panels that did subject matter requirements. So and I also feel that AB 130 has been largely underused because of the structure of our exams. So here's the first question. If we accept a national exam, does AB 130 force us to use that exam's domains for transcript analysis?
That's a good question. I don't think so, David, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think the way that it works is the subject matter requirements are the domains that need to be used. And the SMRs, as you know, are developed and adopted by this commission. And so the national assessments would need to be aligned to those subject matter requirements.
Okay, one of my concerns is, having analyzed transcripts since AB 130, you could end up with somebody who has, let's say they have a history degree and they want to have a multiple subject credential. One would think that they would be able to get credit for their history degree to be and not have to test out in that portion. But the way that the exams work, because of the test structure, if you don't also have English waived, you end up having to take the whole CSET.
Right.
So I think, my concern is not only that the test, whatever it is we choose, and I'm not opposed to a off-the-shelf model, but my fear is that unless we know what the score reporting is for that assessment and how fine-grained that reporting is, we may not be able to use the mixing and matching that AB 130 allows us to do. And that will essentially render AB 130 largely moot because we won't be able to access it. What I'm hearing you say is that even if we go with an out-of-state option, we would still be in control, we, the commission, would still be in control of what the SMRs are.
Right. We would need those publishers to show us what the alignment is, to tell us how they feel that their national exam measures California subject matter requirements. And so it would line up similarly to what we have now. So the situation with CSET that you mentioned, much of that is caused by the fact that the subject matter requirements were developed prior to AB 130 as test specifications for the CSETs. And so they have a whole new purpose now. And this world of mixing and matching wasn't done. Nobody was matching SMRs to coursework, for example. And so now that we are, it has created some problems because in the past, tests were not designed. The subtests in all subject areas were not, for CSET even, were not separated to the point where it makes it a clean domain evaluation model, right? Because more than one subtest might measure one particular domain. So we potentially have a similar situation with national exams, but it would be about that alignment to the SMRs. And so which portions of which national exams met the domain requirements based on AB 130 would be based on that alignment. And we'd have to look real close at that and make some decisions about it.
And then switching from subject matter to, well, not exactly switching from subject matter, BASP. I have a lot of concerns about native speakers of Spanish who are not able to pass what people like me call a BCLAD, that is now the bilingual authorization in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
How would this impact those candidates for that?
The language assessments are a good question about this because I think we're not quite sure yet how those would fit in. We'd have to look at what the national off-the-shelf test companies have available and see if there's anything that would work for that and that would measure those domains the way that they exist right now.
Thank you.
And I would just like to say that for me, at least, I'm not opposed to looking at a national test as long as we're in control of the SMRs and we know that it is aligned, that the score reporting is sufficient to allow us to mix and match as per AB 130. And the price for candidates is minimal, well, reasonable.
Thank you. I just have a follow-up question from our public comments. So are we able to vet any of the national tests with teachers? Is there a process where we can vet some of that? And then the question around the cultural bias, do we have any sense of what the metrics or measures would show around the cultural bias built into any of these national tests?
Well, the national exams follow more or less the same development procedures that we follow for our custom exams that are outlined in your agenda item. And those are based on what we call the joint national standards for assessment. And so I think we have every reason to believe that these exams are vetted the same way our CSET exams are, but it's absolutely possible, just based on my experience in the testing industry these last couple of decades, that we could work out a contract with these. I mean, California is a big state. And so I think it's entirely likely we could work out a contract with these companies to be able to have California teachers look at those exams and vet them the same way.
And so one example of how we could do that is, yes, the national exam have recommended passing scores, but we could continue with the same process we have now of having just California teachers look at the results and do a standard setting with just California teachers.
Yeah, we do that now, for example, in the performance assessment world with EdTPA, which is a national exam, but they do a specific California cut score that this commission approves. So,
other commissioners' questions? Okay. Commissioner Davis, sorry, my apologies.
No, I wasn't sure if I was being called.
I know.
Thank you, commission staff, for this very robust report and the recommendations. And I have a question for Mr. DeGear. Were the staff recommendations, there are 3 that they're there. Are those the only options we have, or can we put in a 4th bullet point?
We would love any feedback you have. So, for example, what Commissioner Simmons said about score reporting, that's something that we can absolutely pay very close attention to and talk to developers. So yes, please.
I've got a statement, more of a commentary on assessments. And before I begin my commentary, I want to acknowledge all the diligent work that staff does here. And I want to let you know in advance that my comments here are not to be taken as a criticism of your work, because you guys have done robust work over the years in the realm of assessment and teacher preparation. But instead, I want you to think of this as like, can you hear me now? Yeah. So, yes. So I want this to be a presentation of the origins of assessments and how continuing them will perpetuate disproportionate harm to BIPOC folks who are seeking entrance into the field of education. So we have these intentional practices in the history of assessment to recruit and retain undergraduate and graduate students who bring racial, ethnic, and linguistic diversity to the field of education, serving children birth through 12th grade. And also those demands demand constant attention to a multifaceted approach to getting a credential. So the Department of Education in 2016 chronicled a predominantly white 82% workforce throughout the United States, serving populations that are increasingly more diverse. Numerous systems, structures, act as barriers for students of color like myself when I was seeking my credential. And I've got sources for all of this stuff. If anyone's interested in any of these research studies that I've done in the wee hours of last night. Moses and Nana, in their article, The Testing Culture and the Persistence of High-Stakes Testing Reforms, posit that the connection between the current federal and state emphasis on standardized testing reforms and educational opportunities, particularly among low-income students and students of color, show that people who look like me are victimized by tests. And I think I know it's systematic. It's not intentional by any particular party, but it is the end result. And the conversation around the table today has been about For example, when Commissioner Simmons mentioned about people who don't necessarily have English as their native language or their heritage language, what do we do in those instances? That shouldn't be a discussion. I mean, it is, and not, again, in a way where people shouldn't be talking about this. It shouldn't be an issue. We should be embracing multilingualism. It shouldn't be a handicap or a disability when people come to this country and don't speak English, that we suddenly vilify it when they get to school, and then we force them to speak a different language to show competence. And that in order to get employed. That's in our system. That has nothing to do with a particular person or an ideology. Educational research has shown that high stakes assessments serve to degrade educational aims, limit and constrict the curriculum, constrain teachers, stress students, and curtail access to post-secondary education. Bunch of sources. And according to Jennings, relying on the data of student achievement test scores can serve to subvert both learning and equality of educational opportunities for far too many students. So another study done by NEA, key takeaways from the racist beginnings of standardized testing, in its self-titled article. Since their inception a century ago, standardized tests have been instruments of racism and a biased system. Students of color, particularly those from low-income families, have suffered the most from high-stakes testing in U.S. schools. And today a movement is growing across the country to resist testing, abuse, and overuse, and to promote authentic assessment. According to Ibram X. Kendi, and he's one of my favorite authors, read all his books, got an opportunity to meet him at the University of Pittsburgh. To tell the truth about standardized tests is to tell the story of the eugenicists who created and popularized these tests in the United States more than a century ago. As the U.S. absorbed millions of immigrants from Europe beginning in the 19th century, the day's leading social scientists, many of them who are white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, were concerned by the infiltration of non-whites into the nation's public schools. And his 1923 book, A Study of American Intelligence, psychologist and eugenicist Carl Brigham wrote, African Americans were on the low end of the racial, ethnic, and/or cultural spectrum. Testing, he believed, showed the superiority of the Nordic race group and warned of the promiscuous intermingling of the new immigrants in the American gene pool. Furthermore, the education system, he argued, was in decline and, quote, will proceed with an accelerating rate as the racial mixture becomes more and more extensive. So what does this all have to do with this discussion about this item? Well, here we have an opportunity to innovate and create a pathway that is not a high stakes examination, but instead can move forward and focus. And the focus should be on promoting authentic assessments that reflect the broad range of students' learning and skills, including creativity, leadership, critical thinking, and collaboration. There are a variety of ways that programs could use these multiple measures, and by statute should be following this practice to advance candidates to clearing their credentials. As discussed yesterday, TPAs and examinations should be the smallest part of the process or eliminated altogether from the process. The duplicitous nature of examinations like the CBEST, for example, and I know we've been talking about that around the table today, for example, have never made sense to me, since the name of the examination implies that it functions as a measurement of skills that our excellent private and public institutions of higher education in California already give to students with passing marks. The basic skills requirement, which tests basic reading, mathematics, and writing skills, became effective on February 1st, 1983, and was the only way to get a credential until the passage of Senate Bill 1209 in 2006, when additional options like the CSET became available to meet basic skills requirements. While this piece of legislation provided another option for candidates to achieve a credential, in my opinion, it did not resolve the fundamental underlying problem with culturally biased high stakes examinations, and they have been viewed by the educators who take them as an editorial on the quality of the candidates' preparation and education received to earn their bachelor's degrees. Some of this was highlighted in public comment on item 2C presented yesterday. When we honestly confront the present day reality of persistent test-defined race and class-based inequality, an inequality that nearly mirrors the general outcomes of the last 100+ years of high-stakes standardized testing in the United States, we are essentially left with a choice between one of two philosophical possibilities. Number one, either the tests are providing objective and accurate measures of human intelligence and learning, thereby potentially validating the claims of eugenicists and those that believe in the biology of IQ. Or the tests are neither objective nor accurate and may in fact be contributing to the very inequality that they are purporting to measure. A final point that I want to make is with the following questions. What is the evidence regarding the reliability of teacher assessments in high stakes contexts? The answer is that the evidence is limited and often ambiguous. Research has revealed that teachers can be influenced by a number of construct irrelevant factors as they work toward their judgments, factors such as gender, socioeconomic background, effort, and behavior that risk biasing their assessments. And when considering construct relevant achievements, teachers are often expected to use verbal or semi-verbal sets of criteria, such as high-level descriptions, which typically require a degree of subjective interpretation and application, and so are themselves a source of unwanted variation in judging standards. Arguably, the most effective strategy for addressing these issues is participation and consensus moderation, and we've talked about that around this table. Yet there have been very few attempts to provide evidence of the effectiveness of moderation in practice. The potential value of and the growing resilience upon teacher assessments in high-stakes applications demand the evaluation of consensus moderation become a built-in part of the process. So not just talking about implicit bias, but bias in that process as well. While there is some evidence of consensus moderation used in our processes, as presented yesterday and in previous presentations about prep examinations, several commissioners around this table asked about the data and the processes associated with the commission's practices, and staff have been very receptive and responsive, and we do appreciate that. I believe that our staff does an amazing job. Even though they do this amazing job, they can't resolve the issues raised by historians and posited by eugenicists. As we continue to struggle with the reality that our state, through these examinations, is systematically discriminating against the very diversity it alleges it wants to attract into our workforce, this can end with this body. We have an opportunity to act, and I think this is the moment in history to innovate and set an example for every other state to follow. And AB 130 is our gateway. And I look forward to walking this path with everyone here. Since we control those SMRs that we were talking about before, I'd like to maybe posit a fourth option, which has nothing to do with a high stakes assessment. And I don't know what that might look like, but also have an opportunity for that to be voiced so that we can consider that around this table. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis, for all the research you did to present this to us. We're going to go with Commissioner Heredia, and then we're going to go to Zoom to Chair Greenwich Shire, and then we're going to go to Commissioner Brown. Others, okay? All right, Student Liaison Wicks. All right, so Commissioner Heredia, you want to lead off?
Thank you. Thanks, staff, for the way this agenda item was presented to us. It was very easy to read, and I thought that you made the arguments well for all the options in here, having us, with the plus and the minuses, so I do appreciate that. I also think that it was so clear, this is my bias, it was so clear to easily pick one of these as opposed to, kind of struggling with them. So when I read this, first of all, I kept, when I'm thinking about, the different options, especially option 2 and possibly 3, I kept thinking about cost and staff time associated with each of these options. There's so much to be already refined in terms of how we assess students and student teachers in the field, that I thought, some of these options take away from that time and staff time. I'm assuming that's the case. Thinking about this and the cost. I support, the options of, actually number one was probably like my favorite option, just because the other ones seem like we've got so much to do with number one. I mean, we know our students, we know the tests, we know which tests we have to consider, like eliminating, getting it really into the, into the coursework of students, like we have with the RICA. And it seems like we could spend our time on option one, really looking at what do we have on our plate. I think that we could look at the other options to inform what we do, but I really see us spending more time on this, on this option. We own it, and we have owned it for a long time. I'm not always as confident about tests coming from off the shelf. I would be less inclined, probably not inclined, to want to look at things that are off the shelf. I mean, but then again, we have to look, I think it's important we look at everything. I struggle with the tests that are developed outside California, and yet our students, that don't really understand the context and the complexities of teaching kids in California. And so that's always a major concern of mine. Yesterday, when we were talking about around this table here, and we were looking at the other agenda item, where we were considering, the San Diego institution, we really delved into the idea, what are you doing to assure that the students who are getting that credential, an important credential, what are you doing to ensure that they are not only doing their practicum in a community that truly reflects the diversity of the state, but also my question was, how are you supporting people who are still trying to learn when they most likely have not grown up in a similar setting, or are learning to teach and work with students unlike themselves? And I think that's always the thing that really comes back to me all the time. How do you make the familiar, how do you make it that unfamiliar familiar to students and help them to understand? So I would support, again, spending our time looking at what we're doing here. If it doesn't take too much time looking at other exams, but I just, so it's kind of 1 and 3, but I really don't want to have the staff work on a lot of, spend a lot of time on something that, just by yesterday's discussion, we're still trying to figure out, how to quickly address the need of eliminating assessments. So I don't want to go back and spend a whole year on, let's look at all the other assessments. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Chair Grano-Shire.
Thank you. Good morning again. I want to echo my commissioners. Thank you for bringing this agenda item to us and the work that you've done and the options. Well, what I'm hearing, and I know Mr. DeGeer wants us to provide some direction. I'm leaning towards your third option, where we look at a combination, but I think we just need to continue this conversation. But I'm hearing some decision-making criteria that my fellow commissioners have talked about, and this, as I think Commissioner Davis said, AB 130 allows us an opportunity to innovate and create. And so if we do that, I'm hearing that we need to think about at least the following criteria and maybe others that arise in this conversation. One, costs for sure for our candidates. Two, staff time, and I appreciate Commissioner Heredia, her concern with what this impact might have on staff. Commissioner Simmons' emphasis on alignment is absolutely critical, and then our public comments about again, costs, but also how do we make sure this gets vetted by teachers or teachers are involved somehow in this process. So as we consider this opportunity, and we really do have an opportunity here, I think those are some of the criteria that I would like the staff to consider and then help us think about what the path forward is. Thank you.
Thank you for helping summarize that. Okay, we have Commissioner Brown, and then we have Student Liaison Wicks, and then we'll have Commissioner De La Torre and Commissioner Litt.
Thank you. As an early childhood educator, I often try to think of things as start simple. So if I am mistaken, I apologize. But it sounds like there's the CBEST, the CSET, the CTEL, otherwise known as ECLAD, and RECA, 4 exams that we're looking at. Did I hear that right? In terms of the set of exams?
So those are the 4 that are in the mega contract. And we also have one additional one, the CPACE.
CPACE.
So that's the one for people to demonstrate competence in the administrator's standard without having to complete a program.
Yeah.
Preparation program.
Okay, that's a lot. It seems to me that if CBEST means basic educational skills, that we really should seriously think about if you get a bachelor's degree in an accredited institution, you have basic skills. I'm just saying it. Why else would we have someone get a degree if not to acquire skills? The CSET's more complex because it's subject examinations, and that really does differentiate all the different ways that and places that people teach. And that I think we should really look at. That AB 130 really does give us an opportunity, as you said, to innovate and recreate. And it seems to me that you also mentioned that in terms of the RECA, we're looking at revising the reading literacy performance assessment so that that goes away. Because what I'm hearing over and over again is what these tests do is they create, you called it high stakes, I'll call it high intensity, very anxiety producing situations where lots of people who could be really good teaching children and adolescents don't do well in the face of these exams. So I would really support in whatever way I can, because I'm not a, test savvy person, to really look at alternatives. And that seems to me that we ought to be looking at what other states do to make sure that their teachers are well prepared. And then when they get in the classrooms, we need to continue their support. Because once you get in a classroom, things change. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to reassure Commissioner Pabry that we have you in the queue as well. So Student Liaison Wicks, and then Commissioner De La Torre, Commissioner Litt, and Commissioner Pabry.
Great. All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for even opening this conversation. I think this is really exciting as a student who is currently going through all these different tests, and it's a lot. I'll just start with that. And I think there are plenty of different options. I do love the dialect that we're having, talking about the possibility of providing something outside of a testing option to prove basic skills and other, I guess, just modes of proving the skills you have to become a teacher. I think for some students, though, having the test option will be beneficial. Sometimes just going in, taking the test, saying, here, I proved it, I'm done, instead of taking the time out to take a full course can be a positive or something that's helpful for them. I think if we can have the conversation on providing both an option, like, okay, you can go in and take the test, or you can prove your skills in a different way, whether it is from completing a certain course or a program, however that looks. I think providing students both possibilities will open up the, I don't want to use opportunities again. It'll give students more options. And I think that's the best way in completing this. So we are attracting multiple students, because some students will have the idea that taking this test is too much, it's too much anxiety, it's too much pressure and whatever I have going on. Or some students will want to finish a program, finish a course to prove that skill. I did have a question looking at, I think I'm just a little confused on adopting national standards. If we were to do that, at least from what I've learned at my university, some courses in the liberal studies major will waive certain tests in the CBEST or CSETs. So if we were to adopt a national standard or national test, will certain courses provided by the university waive certain, I guess, different tests that come through the national standards? Yeah.
So, I mean, ideally, we would love everyone to meet basic skills and subject matter competence through their coursework.
Right.
We would love for that. But as you said, for some people, it is easier, you know, especially if they want to teach in an area that they didn't major in. You're absolutely right. For some people, it's going to be a lot easier just take that test, show your subject matter competence, than to take all the coursework. So regardless of which tests we use, whether they're customized or the national ones, yes, people will continue to be able to use their coursework to demonstrate both basic skills and subject matter competence.
Okay. Thank you. And then also, the last point I'll bring up, I know for some of them, I don't know if this is something new that's going on with the commission, maybe things have changed. For me, I'm pursuing my multi-subject credential right now, and I had to complete the CBEST and all of the CSETs, or there's math, one on focus on math and science, English and history, and then the music theory one. I'm confused. I think I felt I'll speak for myself, completing the CBEST and then having to complete the CSETs as well was a little, I didn't understand the point of it. The CBEST, the math and English covered in that test was the math and, I guess it was more the math and the CSET. So I was confused as to why I had to take a step back when I could have just completed one test that show that I can complete the CBEST. So I think in just looking at the way we are testing students, so we don't have to require them to go through another hurdle, go through another test, would be something to keep talking about, and something just for further dialect on that. I'm curious to know how, if we continue requiring tests, we can allow students to prove their subject matter in a different way and not only have to just prove it through tests that kind of, I guess, how can I word this best? I would just say I think there are better ways to test our knowledge. Thank you.
Really appreciate you being here and appreciate your voice. Thank you so much. Commissioner De La Torre.
Thank you, Commissioner Martinez. Listening to student liaison, I'm thinking that there was no actual need for him to take both the CBEST and the CSETs. So I think that was just a result of bad advisement. So unfortunately, programs need to know how to better advise their student candidates on what needs to be done. Am I correct?
Partly, part of our problem is there's just been, you know, for so long, that was the only way to get a credential. And so we're fighting against that historical knowledge. The other issue is that people often take those exams before they even apply to be in a program. So as programs know the options, they're trying to help candidates, you know, not have to take the exams.
Right.
But because they hear in high school or from someone, you know, who became a teacher 20 years ago, that's just the way you do it. So yeah,
but am I correct in that he did not have to take all those assessments?
Yeah, that's true. The other way you could have gone is because you took CSET multiple subjects, you could have also taken CSET writing, and that would have been it. You wouldn't have had to take CBEST also.
But with a degree in political science, my guess is he would have already met
I would guess
BSR requirements.
Right.
Okay, and that wasn't what I originally wanted to say, but it came out. Thank you to my colleague to my left, David here, who shared that. But it is confusing. The landscape is confusing with all this testing. We need to make it more transparent. And my experience with national board certification is that candidates come to me after having spoken to colleagues or other individuals who don't have the most up-to-date information. So they come to me misinformed, and then I tell them, you know what? Just ask me because I'm the district expert. Don't listen to anybody else. Ask me because I have the most up-to-date information. I think we need to do something similar where everyone can come to the CTC or to our website or wherever it needs to be and find the actual information there, the most up-to-date information. And just to make it clear to everybody, so everybody knows, especially candidates, potential teachers. The things I wanted to bring up is that I think about, I'm a teacher, so I think about what kind of assessments are the best assessments that I would use as a teacher, and what would I want to see in my classroom, and what would we all want to see in our children's classrooms. And I don't think an off-the-shelf test is the best assessment that I would use with my students. I think the best assessments that I've used are the ones that I have developed and modified to meet the needs of my students because I know them best. And I don't think an assessment coming from another state knows California's potential teachers best like we do. And so I'm always in favor of something that's tailored or it's more personalized for our population, and it's differentiated for the things that we know we need in California because we know it best. And unfortunately, that is going to cost more money because good things don't come cheap or free. And we just have to bite the bullet and invest in it. Because even when I personalize assessments for my students, there's the cost of my time, which is, of course, it's much easier to use a multiple choice test. It's in the book already, super easy, no cost of my time. Give it to the kids, I'll get scores, right? But is that really the best kind of assessment that we want? So I like to think back, what is the purpose of what is our why with these assessments? So if we go back to that and then move forward to what can be the best for California, and I think offering multiple options is always better because then you have the buy-in of the potential teacher to choose from those options. You know what? I see all these things and I choose this one. But if there's a bottleneck, if there's something that's weeding potential teachers out, we need to find that and fix it to open up the floodgates so that there's multiple options for all potential teachers. And I'm always in favor of that. So just my thoughts.
Thank you so much. I see that Erin has joined us at the table. I think she might want to address some of the complexity around the test.
Yeah. So I think that something David mentioned, which is the history of two assessments being the only option for meeting basic skills and subject matter is one of the things that we're fighting against. And I think that the work that we've done through the governor's roadmap to education careers that we presented on in August is trying to help combat that. You might remember that we shared the basic skills calculator tool. We've moved the coursework option. Historically, the basic skills exam was always the first option that we would provide folks in our web pages. We've moved the coursework exam to the very top of that list, and then we've provided the mix and match of coursework and other options as the second option. So just to kind of, highlight how complicated it is, when we have more options, when we have 8+ options, it becomes challenging to understand what your options are. But the tool really does help you understand that you could take the CSAT multiple subject exams and you could meet the reading and the writing portion just with passage of those 3 subtests. You're missing you take the reading and the math portion. You're missing the writing portion. So you would take that CSAT writing subtest to meet that third option, or you would have a course in English or language arts that could meet that writing portion. Or you could take just the CBEST writing subtest. So there's multiple ways in which folks can meet these requirements. It gives tremendous flexibility. The problem is, who is advising candidates and how are they being informed of their options? And so if they're preparing for their program and looking at, a pathway of someone that inspired them to be a teacher and in getting advice from that individual, they're going to be told to take the CBEST. If they're going to their employer, they may be told to take the CBEST. They may be told about these other options. It really just depends on, how educated that employer is or how educated that counselor is on what the options are. So we have the education career counselors that are available to help. We really hope that programs will, in addition to advising their candidates themselves, we'll put folks in touch with our education career counselors as well so that they can, provide that guidance and give them all those little details about, asking the questions, who are you? What have you done? Have you taken the ACTs? Have you taken the SATs? Those are also avenues in which you can meet basic skills. So, and then, starting to look at how we can provide that same pathway and those same flexibilities for CSET front and center instead of it being this assumption that you can only take the exam. So just wanted to kind of put.
Is that the website that we previewed at our last commissioner meeting? Yeah, 'cause
Yes.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And I played with it a lot and I saw, I really like this. And if I had been a potential candidate, I like being able to put where I am. This is what I'm doing on my roadmap.
Yeah.
It's very effective. I liked it
and
a
the
lot.
great thing about the tool that we created for basic skills is that once we complete all of the development of our web and system upgrades, candidates will be able to use that tool and say, this is what I've done. And then they'll be able to upload documentation at the end of that process. And we'll be able to do an assessment of that documentation and tell them, yes, you did meet basic skills in mathematics and you did meet it in reading and you haven't yet met it in writing and here's your options. So it will be interactive to the point where they'll get an evaluation at the end of that process so that they can see what they still may need to complete and what their options are to complete it.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I mean, clearly talking about tests have opened up lots of different areas of conversation. And appreciate also again the comments of Student Liaison Wicks and hope our website and our education career counselors will be helpful. I just wanted to check in with Executive Director Sandy if you wanted to say anything before we go to Commissioner Litt and then we go to Commissioner Pabry and then we have Commissioner Klatt and then I think we're going to have our chair wrap up some few things before we move on to our next agenda item. So Executive Director Sandy, did you want to add anything?
I'm just appreciating how much good information is being shared and perspective is being shared at the table right now. Thank you, Aaron, for coming to the table and reminding all of us about the roadmap that is just getting its launch. If you go to our webpage right now, there's a button called Pathways or Roadmap to Teaching. And it's a portal. You walk through that door, and many resources are available to you. And we will be keep refining that as we go, as we figure out where people get stuck and keep improving it. It's really quite interesting. Somebody, I can't remember which commissioner at this point, asked, "What is our why for examinations?" And historically, the why for these examinations has been to verify knowledge or skill. In basic skills in the 1980s, all you needed were a couple of letters home to parents that were not well written, and you've got now an evidence base to say teachers aren't sufficiently able to read, write, and do basic math, and CBEST is born as an examination that was not optional initially. So it became a very high stakes requirement a long time ago. Similarly with CSET, there's always been in statute the option of the requirement. The first requirement is take a test to demonstrate your subject matter competence to teach in the area you want to teach in, or take a program that meets every single thing that's tested on the CSET. So we've had those two pathways for decades now, but the primary pathway that candidates start with is the test because it represents an efficiency for them, unless they don't pass, and then they get stuck in the swirling, retake and keep throwing yourself at this examination. AB 130 changed the game. And has created huge opportunity. I appreciate Commissioner Simmons starting with the first thing you started with, Commissioner Simmons, was that AB 130 is largely underused at this point. I think that's true. I think it represents opportunity to recognize coursework and pathways to meet these requirements that the whole system wasn't prepared yet to enact fully. But we're on path. to really get some systems in place that support coursework evaluation as a key, first pass at what is it that you're missing that the state determines is critical. Maintaining our subject matter requirements, and the control over that for each of the examinations that we retain is also key. Upgrading those SMRs so that they are consistent with the new moment we find ourselves in is really a critical step on our work plan to supporting this work. But in the course of implementing AB 130, my sense is that these tests have become lower stakes. They represent an efficiency, as our student liaison pointed out, for candidates who would like to just see if I can get this wiped out by a test. And, great if I have it wiped out because now it's behind me and I can just progress forward. Maintaining that efficiency as an option is something I hope that you will keep in consideration, commissioners, but recognizing the opportunity to fully expand and get the message out to every corner of the state that there are multiple ways to meet these requirements, and entry into teaching is not as challenging as it used to be. So anyway, thank you for giving me a moment to cut in line and just add some perspective from here.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Commissioner Litt.
Thank you. First, I'd want to thank the staff, fellow commissioners, and the public for a really robust, healthy, and important conversation. I also want to encourage us to take this sort of time-bound moment around a contract to recognize we have an important opportunity for leadership and influence. So a lot of what we're discussing, is appropriately responsive to a timely issue, right? A contract is running out. We have a host of state laws and regulations that we're responsible for. And those are important and we have to be responsive. At the same time, given the size and the impact of our state, we have a real opportunity to sort of influence and shape the ways that we speak to the educator workforce and the kinds of ways that we bring folks in to the profession. I really don't want us to miss that opportunity as we dig into the weeds, as important as the weeds are. So first, we know that we currently have an imperfect and overly burdensome assessment system. We also understand, which some of my fellow commissioners have shared, the fundamental purpose of an assessment system, right, which is to help us develop confidence that we're preparing an educator workforce ready to meet the needs of our diverse California students and the schools and communities that they serve. We start by articulating our goals and purposes. We do that with some robust standards and TPEs. We also have a host of evidence from other sources in our fantastic programs that are approved that give us evidence of what our future teachers know and are able to do. So I would recommend that we encourage some further study and take a step back. Can we do some alignment, not only of what national tests might be able to provide us in response to the current sort of policy context, but can we take a look at the assessment system that we currently have, how well that aligns with our goals, which are articulated through our standards and our TPEs, what other sources of good evidence we have to meet those. That might actually allow us to influence the shape of the policy context that we work in. Do we really need a test of basic skills, given all the other evidence we have of educator qualifications, both on the ways that they come in, the ways that we prepare them, and ways that we send them out? In the end of the day, we have to respond to the policy context in which we work, but we have an opportunity here, given the need to respond to the contract issue, to actually be able to articulate more clearly a vision around a purpose for an assessment system, what it is that we're hoping to accomplish through it, how it lines up. I think all the conversations we're having, which are really important about the ways we manage the contours and complexities around the various policy contexts that we've inherited, really, I think, help to underscore some of the problems with the assessment system that we currently have. And at the very least, we can help learn more about that, articulate it to the public, perhaps to our policymaker colleagues, and we may come up with some more robust options for consideration beyond which version of a contract we're going to pursue, which is our responsibility, and we need to do that thoughtfully. but we might also have some other things to offer more broadly around this really important fundamental issue about who and how we bring folks into the educator workforce, what we have confidence in that they know and can do, and how welcoming we are, right, to the diverse and talented folks that we want to encourage to come into the profession.
Appreciate the big picture. I have Commissioner Pabry, did you want to respond to Commissioner Litt? Because Commissioner Pabry's been waiting for a while. No, okay, I'm sorry, Commissioner Simmons, sorry.
I know that I am constantly pushing for urgency. And let me tell you what happened to me last week. I had a candidate who had a bachelor's degree from Central Asia. And she had to go through foreign transcript evaluation so that we could see what it was equivalent to. Then my credential analyst and I went through her report to try and figure out what we could count and what we couldn't count. So it is the sooner we can get domains that tie to a test, the sooner I will be able to hire good people without making them jump through extra hoops. Okay, with RJ's situation hurts my heart. If he had to take the CBEST, if he took the CBEST when he didn't have to. Mm-hmm. So as a credential analyst, I really want us to feel the urgency of our candidates that we have the option to make a difference for.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Pabry and then Commissioner Klatt, and then our chair will help wrap us up for today. But before our chair wraps us up, Commissioner, but you're going to go after Commissioner Pabry. Yes, okay.
Thank you so much. Good morning. So I'm actually, Commissioner Litt very articulately said a lot of what I was going to say. I'll just weigh in on a few things. And David, I totally hear the sense of this tension about making a deliberative, thoughtful move forward in a post-AB 130 era, if you will, with the very pressing needs of students who are taking tests right now, classrooms that are not filled with qualified teachers right now. So we really do need to find a path forward that combines the two. I think since this conversation is about renewing or moving forward from a mega contract, some of what we've been thinking about is sort of looking at all of these tests together. But I think that each of these tests serve a very different purpose. And I think the approach to addressing them is going to need to be very different. I mean, some of them, like the CBEST, are really gatekeepers to the profession. You can't enter the door if you haven't demonstrated subject matter, basic skills competency. And I think that begs a very different question. But given that all of our candidates, regardless of what route they're coming into the profession, whether they're coming from out of state, they need to have a bachelor's degree. I know in statute there is need for demonstration through a test. I think the approach we want to take around this basic skills might be quite different from the approach we want to take for the tests like the CSET or the RICA that are assessing competency, are one of the ways to assess competency post completion of a program. And there may be certain candidates who come to us from different routes, from different pathways, from different states that might still need that option. And so I see different value to these different tests, and I would just like to caution that we take different paths in making decisions based on the purpose of each of these tests. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Commissioner Klatt, and then Commissioner Hartwig, and then Chair. Okay. Right now or after? Okay. All right. So we have Commissioner Klatt, Commissioner Hartwig, and then Commissioner Cotton. Appreciate you. No, thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to go back a little bit in the discussion to the comments from Commissioner Davis and public advocates, because I think it seems like we have these legislative constraints about we have to have these tests, and it seems like the trend and the movement and the desires to get away from that for many of the reasons that have been mentioned. So I feel like we're in this waiting, like we have to kind of wait for that to happen, but we have this immediate need for the contract. So my inclination would be to go to whatever has that we minimize as best we can. We have to have it. So if we can minimize it by creating options, by creating all these things, if we can minimize the cost, which I as a teacher, I totally agree with Commissioner De La Torre about, I want my test to reflect my local environment. In this case, though, I feel like if we can make it less expensive by taking it off the shelf, that's a way to minimize impact. And so that's, I feel like minimizing would be how I would want to go, all of the things. But then I have a technical question. Regardless of what contract we go with, is there a way we can require that vendor to have a checkbox that before they can accept payment for a test, it gives the link to the tool, so that before someone paid for a test, because it breaks my heart too, that you had to take the CBEST when you didn't have to, that they have to advise that you might not actually need to take this test.
Yeah, we certainly could do that. In fact, we've done that a little bit right now. If you go to, say, the current exam site to look for information to register for CBEST, you'll find a link at the top that says, you might not need to take CBEST. Click here to find out more information. So that's the first thing they see. As other staff have mentioned here, we've been really working hard for a lot of years to try to steer people away from CBEST and some of these other tests, but people really keep going to it.
History and urban legend continues to go. So, okay. So I think I have Commissioner Hartwig, right?
Yes, thank you. Two just quick thoughts. First, putting on my public member hat, and as that position that I come to this table with, I want to follow on some of the thoughts, including the thought from Commissioner Litt that this is really an opportunity for us. I definitely would like to put a vote in for allocating some staff time to looking at what is happening on the national scene and in other states in terms of best practices elsewhere, as long as there's not a feeling that this would be overly burdensome. Because I do think that as this huge state that is so complex, we are constantly looking in like we need to do. But I want to make sure that we are also appreciating the incredible work that goes on in other parts of the country and taking advantage of successes and opportunities that have been developed elsewhere. So while I fully appreciate our need to be as local as possible, I just want to make sure we take this opportunity to learn from elsewhere and to be humble and appreciate that there may be some great ideas going on elsewhere and that we don't skip that moment to make sure we truly are the leader of the pack like we should be. So I put my vote in terms of our discussion to making sure that we do allocate the staff time to look around the country and around the world for what we can learn at this moment. And then my other one quick thought relates to how do we change the understanding out there, the legacy understanding of what you have to do to become a teacher in terms of exams. And I just want to ask and request that we work with our major education partners. This may already be happening, but particularly the unions, the CTA, who has a direct line to over 300,000 teachers, and the CFT and all the other professional organizations, because they can, I think in this instance, really be our partners, not necessarily with the candidates who may not be in contact yet, but with the practicing teachers who, I don't know what all the resources and communication forms are, but who may be able to update their own knowledge. And then when they're having those one-on-one conversations, give better advice, basically. So this may already be happening, but this is like a great opportunity for us in terms of, I think, when we're communicating about trying to clear up get rid of prior information, we look to our partners. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Cotton, welcome and thank you.
Thank you. Just briefly, I want to say, first off, thank you, RJ, for sharing your story. So important, and that's why you're at this table. So keep doing that. Keep sharing your experiences. Keep sharing your stories. That is key. thank you also for the roadmap and for kind of looking at what is out there and how do we best communicate. Becoming a teacher is not an easy task. It is not an intuitive process at all. And so it requires someone else. It requires an outside person to sit and hold your hand and walk through your transcript and walk through your coursework and walk through all of those things with you. We understand that. We also understand the urgency around our teacher shortage and teacher recruitment, and bringing people into this profession, I think is key. I do want to kind of caution us as yes, Commissioner Hartwig, we need to be looking at what are the best practices both nationally and internationally, right? But it's also being cautious about looking at those tests, those national tests. We don't want to continue to exacerbate the equity gaps that we see here in California by saying, yes, we'll take those tests. We need to make sure that we know who's passing those tests, what those demographics look like as well. My comments are brief and urgent. We got to do something. We have to bring teachers into this profession. We have to support them as best as we can. We have to look at what their strengths are, what they're bringing to our classrooms. It's nothing more heartbreaking. I used to be in human resources, nothing more heartbreaking than to see a teacher who is highly effective with their students who can't pass a test. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Those great comments. As we start to wrap this up, I'm going to hand it over to Chair Greno-Shire to provide some guidance. And thank you again for everybody for amazing conversations and the urgency that everyone communicates as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Martinez, and thank you to my fellow commissioners and the public for this very, very important, timely, and robust conversation. I'm looking at Mr. DeGear, and if I was him, I would be saying, what are we doing next? So here's an idea, David. I'm hearing, because you laid out 3 options, and then Commissioner Davis gave us this larger picture of making sure that we're reflecting the historical perspective and the research. And so my recommendation to the commission is that we ask the staff to consider option 3 with the criteria that we have in some ways co-constructed this morning. And I earlier gave a list, and I'm happy to share that list with David. But in addition to that list that I mentioned earlier, I'm hearing this opportunity to step back and reflect, but the tension of the urgency. So I'll just pitch that to the staff and have you weigh that this is an opportunity to take a really serious look about the path forward. But at the same time, you've heard from the commissioners, and I would add myself, there is urgency so that we don't have this forever shortage that one of our colleagues mentioned. I also heard a differentiated approach to each of the assessment. And I know the staff already know that, but I want to just add that. And then again, the urgency. So we as a commission have co-constructed what Commissioner Martinez has called design principles and guidelines, and we give them to the staff, and we ask that you come back at a future meeting with what you have found. So thank you all for this very important conversation.
May I just say thank you, Madam Chair and commissioners?
Yeah.
And you've passed the baton back to us, and we will follow up very soon.
Great, thank you. And also, as I adjourn the Educator Preparation Committee, don't forget there's donuts. Yeah. I don't know. Should we go for a break? Okay. It's about 4 minutes. Let's do 10:10. We'll be back in 10 minutes. 10:10. A little over 10.
Welcome back, commissioners. I now let's see, where are we? Next is the Professional Practice Committee. Commissioner Hartwig, will you please convene the committee?
Yes, good morning. I now convene the Professional Practices Committee. The committee has one item today. Item 3A is the Division of Professional Practices Annual Workload Report Fiscal Year 2022 to 2023. Rachel Gritzofi will present this item. Ms. Gritzofi, will you please begin?
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. To begin with, good morning. And I just want to note that upon further review, we will be updating some of the information, some of the data in this report or the legislative report. I'll be clear to point those out when I get to them, okay? This agenda item presents the annual report on discipline workload of the Division of Professional Practices for fiscal year 22-23. In addition to administering the laws and rules governing the issuance of credentials and approving educator preparation programs, the Commission on Teacher Credentialing enforces professional conduct standards. To ensure a high level of public confidence in California teachers and other credentialed public school employees, DPP monitors the moral fitness and professional conduct of credential applicants and holders. The Commission has authority to discipline an applicant or holder for fitness-related misconduct. Disciplinary action may be taken based on the applicant's or holder's immoral or unprofessional conduct, evident unfitness for service, refusal to obey laws regulating certificated duties, unjustified refusal to perform under an employment contract, addiction to intoxicating beverages or controlled substances, commission of any act of moral turpitude or intentional fraud or deceit in an application. DPP collects information concerning alleged misconduct and presents the information to the Committee of Credentials. The 7 members of the committee are appointed by the Commission to review alleged misconduct. The committee includes 3 credential holders employed in public schools, 1 elementary teacher, 1 secondary teacher, 1 administrator, 1 school board member, and 3 public members. The committee meets once each month for 3 days at the Commission's office here in Sacramento. It has the legal authority to close an investigation where the evidence does not support the allegations or to recommend discipline where the evidence shows probable cause to believe the allegations. All disciplinary recommendations made by the committee are subject to appeal by the credential applicant or holder and final approval by Commission. DPP obtains jurisdiction to initiate an investigation of misconduct and or moral fitness when it receives information including, but not limited to, the following: a report of an employment action taken by an employing school district as a result of misconduct or why allegations of misconduct are pending, a complaint made under penalty of perjury by someone with firsthand knowledge of the misconduct, a report of criminal convictions from the Department of Justice, or from self-disclosure on an application or credential. I'll begin with the division workload for the year. In 22-23, the fiscal year began with 2,605 cases. In July 22, and steadily increased to 3,139 cases in April of 2023, before ending the fiscal year at 3,074 cases. DPP's caseload totals have increased but averaged just above the prior normal range of 2,600 to 2,800 cases, with an average of 2,886 cases. In 2022-23, DPP opened 5,740 cases, or an average of 478 cases per month, which meets the normal range of 400 to 500 cases opened per month. In comparison to the previous 4 fiscal years, DPP opened an average of 4,717 cases per fiscal year, or an average of 393 cases per month. DPP receives reports of misconduct from several sources, including applicants who self-disclose, school district reports, and records of arrest and prosecution, which are rap sheets from Department of Justice, and complaints from the public. DPP opened more cases than the last 4 fiscal years, therefore the number of cases opened by report type have also increased. While fiscal year 2021 was our lowest year because of the lingering effects of school closures due to COVID-19, DPP watched a steady return of workload in the last 2 fiscal years. When comparing these numbers from 22-23 to pre-COVID numbers from fiscal year 2018-19, Cases opened by application declined by 64. However, cases opened per application with RAP notification increased by 493 cases. Breach of contract cases also increased each of the past 2 fiscal years. However, the average over the past 5 fiscal years is only 68 cases out of the total caseload of, and this number should be 4,921. The 4-year average was 4,717. Also in the chart below, the School District Office of Education number for 22-23. Your report may say 531, it should be 609, and those will be changed and updated. New cases opened by designation indicate whether an individual under review is a new or current applicant and whether the person holds or held a valid credential. In fiscal year 22-23, the overall number of open cases by designation increased in each of the 4 categories when compared to the last fiscal year, as shown in the table below. The applicants category increased by 37, and the applicant holder category had the most sizable increase of 100% of 189 cases when compared to 21 and 22. First-time applicants and holders consist of the highest number of cases on an annual basis, which increased by 129 and 391 cases respectively compared to fiscal year 21-22. During the fiscal year 22-23, each type of misconduct category increased in comparison to the prior fiscal year. The number of alcohol-related offenses remained the highest misconduct type and included a significant increase of 219 cases from the prior fiscal year. All categories increased in the number of cases. Other crimes increased 179, serious crimes and felonies increased 143, drugs 20, non-sexual child crimes 112, child crimes sexual 61, and adult crime sexual 12. In 2022-23, DPP completed 1,051 initial review cases, which was the second lowest number of such cases completed in the last 5 fiscal years. This is due to the overall reduction of open cases the past 3 fiscal years. But the number of cases ready to proceed to initial review is expected to increase as the growing number of cases opened allows the workload pipeline to increase. In June of 2021, management previously reduced the monthly initial review cases assigned to the committee to 81, or as many as possible. The reduction in casework was due to school closures, which caused the reduction of initial review cases from the normal goal of 90. DPP anticipated that when schools and school districts began to reopen and applications returned to normal levels, the overall workload would increase. DPP is starting to see normal levels of workload returning, which has allowed the committee to review an average of 88 cases per month for fiscal year 22-23. The number of initial review cases directly impacts the number of formal review cases placed on the agenda for the committee review. Formal review is the second stage in the review process of those cases not closed during initial review. At the formal review stage, an individual can request an opportunity to appear and answer questions before committee members. Committee's consent calendar, as expected, the increase in consent calendar cases presented to the committee was the highest in 22-23 than the past 4 fiscal years, including 2018-19, which was just prior to the COVID-19 closures. DPP expects the annual average of cases to continue to increase as the overall educator applications continue to rise due to the highly publicized teacher shortage. The committee reviewed an average of 104 cases per month on the consent calendar, including a high of 177 cases during the October 22 meeting. The 104 case per month average is a 30 case increase per month on average for the 21-22 fiscal year average of 74 cases. The chart below does show the consent calendar cases presented to committee for the last 5 fiscal years. In 2012 and 2013, the commission adopted policies that delegated authority to staff to close cases that met very specific criteria. For example, the commission adopted a policy that allowed staff to close cases that involved a single alcohol-related offense that did not impact children or schools. Staff closed the highest number of these cases over the past 5 years, a total of 1,342 cases in fiscal year 22-23, based on the delegation as shown in the table below. No jurisdiction cases involve cases where the commission is unable to obtain formal jurisdiction. By law, the committee must have both initial and formal jurisdiction before the committee can make a recommendation for discipline. These types of cases typically involve an arrest with no charges filed or an arrest where charges are dismissed. Based on this delegation, staff closed 807 cases in fiscal year 22-23, an increase of 285 cases from the 21-22 fiscal year total of 522, as shown in the table below. Vehicle code violation cases involve specific minor infractions or misdemeanors under the vehicle code. Violations of this type include driving without a license and driving on a suspended license. The exceptions to this policy include the violation involves a child, school property, or adverse publicity impacting the local community. Staff closed 102 cases in fiscal year 22-23 based on commission's vehicle code delegation, also shown in the table below. Expired credential cases involve cases where the educator no longer holds a valid credential and has no application pending. Cases of this type are flagged in the system and reviewed if the individual submits a new application. The expired credential policy contains 4 exceptions: allegations of sexual misconduct, crimes against children, reports filed by school districts, and actions taken by other licensing agencies. Below are the number of cases closed based on commission's expired credential policy. All 4 categories, single offense alcohol, no jurisdiction for formal review, specified vehicle code violations, and expired credential case types, have increased to two levels prior to the decreased levels notated and due to COVID-19. Adverse actions fall into 2 categories: mandatory and discretionary. Mandatory actions are actions required by statute. A criminal conviction for a specified sex offense, drug offense, or certain other specified crimes require the commission to mandatorily revoke all credentials and/or mandatorily deny any pending application. Mandatory applications are placed on the commission's consent calendar as an informational item at its next scheduled commission meeting. Discretionary actions are actions taken following an order by the commission in cases where the committee recommended an adverse action. The committee's recommendation may be accepted by the credential holder or applicant, or it may be appealed. On appeal, an administrative hearing is held before a final action is taken by the commission. A comparison of the numbers of discretionary adverse actions is shown in the table below. The total number of adverse actions increased slightly in the fiscal year 2022, as shown below. Requests for administrative hearing. At the formal review stage, the committee may close its investigation or make a recommendation for adverse action. The person under review for misconduct is provided with notice of the recommendation and has the right to request an administrative hearing. If the person requests an administrative hearing, the commission is represented by the Office of the Attorney General, and the matter is heard by an administrative law judge who issues a proposed decision to the commission. The commission can adopt the proposed decision, reduce the penalty, or reject the proposed decision and call for the transcript. After reviewing the transcript, the commission can adopt the proposed decision or issue its own decision. The average number of cases assigned to the OAG for representation has remained steady over the last 5 fiscal years, as shown below in the table. The OAG adjudicates the commission's cases by administrative hearing, default, withdrawal by the educator, settlement, or declining to prosecute. The table below summarizes the OAG's adjudication of cases for the commission for fiscal year 22-23. Deputy Attorney General requests. In providing support to the OAG, DPP's investigative unit locates victims and witnesses, as well as obtains affidavits and other types of documents to assist the Deputy Attorney Generals in preparation for hearing to the clear and convincing evidentiary standard. The investigative unit began fiscal year 22-23 with 8 pending OAG investigation requests from the previous fiscal year, received 52, completed 52, and ended the fiscal year with 8 pending requests as shown below. Reinstatement of a previously revoked credential. The commission hears petitions for reinstatement as required by the Administrative Procedures Act in closed session to determine whether petitioners whose credentials were revoked are now fit to hold a credential. In a petition for reinstatement, the petitioner has the burden of proof to show that he or she has rehabilitated from the misconduct that led to the revocation. During the past 5 years, the number of petitions for reinstatement per year has remained consistent. During fiscal year 22-23, the commission granted 7 petitions and denied 19 as shown below. The timeliness of action on DPP cases. To measure the timeliness of its cases, DPP selects 30 random cases completed during the fiscal year. Compared to last fiscal year, 21-22, and indicated on the chart below, the average time it took to open a case in fiscal year 22-23 increased slightly from 4 days to 7. This increase was expected due to the increase in total cases. The average time it took for the division to take its first action on a case was reduced from 14 days to 12 days. And the total average time for a case to process from the initial report of misconduct through a fully adjudicated case was reduced from 366 days to 349. The chart below shows details of the milestones from the past 3 fiscal years. In conclusion, in fiscal year 22-23, the DPP continued to process the caseload in a timely manner. While the information provided in this report shows an overall increase in workload, the factors include the return of California school children to classrooms across the state and the increase in overall applications to the commission. The continued publicity, both locally and nationwide, regarding teacher shortages is reflected in the tables above. The DPP also expects increased totals in all areas of workload due to the needed growth of pre-K and TK educators over the next few school years, as children ages 3 to 6 begin their educational preparation for kindergarten. The year began with 2,605 cases. The total number of cases steadily increased during the year to a high 3,139 in April before ending the fiscal year at 3,074. The return of normal caseload and slightly higher receipt of reports of misconduct has resulted in the following. The number of cases opened, 5,740 during the fiscal year, which had averaged 4,017 cases opened over the last 4 fiscal years, reflects an increase this year of 1,023 cases. The average of 478 cases opened per month is also reaching the pre-COVID-19 normal range of 400 to 500 cases. Single alcohol offenses, vehicle code violation cases, and no jurisdiction cases, which are all 3 of the categories of cases Commission has allocated staff to close, have also increased. Consent calendar cases increased by 92 cases annually when compared to last fiscal year. Additional 22-23 highlights include, as stated above, the monthly caseload ended the fiscal year at 3,074 open cases, slightly above the previous normal range of 2,600 to 2,800. DPP anticipates that with the new teacher initiatives indicated above, a new normal will begin to present itself at the end of the current fiscal year and through fiscal year 24-25. Division staff completed 1,500 initial review cases, or approximately, here's another update, it should be 88, not 87 cases per month. The 3 to 4 month pending initial workload remains steady, which are cases ready for committee's review. This workload is expected to remain at these levels through 23-24. Staff processed an increase of 1,502 cases opened in fiscal year 21-22, with an additional 746 cases opened in 22-23, reflecting a significant workload increase of 2,248 cases over the past 2 fiscal years. Our investigative unit completed 52 investigative requests for the OAG in partnership with the Commission's in-house OAG liaison attorney and had an ending balance of 8 requests. DPP maintained its timeliness of reviewing misconduct when compared to the prior 2 fiscal years. And while DPP acknowledges an increase in breach of contract cases, the number of cases is only 2.4% of the overall number of cases open this past fiscal year. DPP expects the number of initial review cases presented to the committee to return to a consistent number of cases this fiscal year and the general goal of 90 per month. Management continues to anticipate that overall caseload will increase and fluctuate during peak times of the school year, in line with the historical trends of educator application submissions and when student classes are in session. Commission staff is pleased to report that DPP continues to fulfill its statutory responsibilities of protecting the safety of school children and the due process of California educators. That completes my report, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ritzafi. We will now open for public comment. If there are members of the public that would like to give a presentation, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or clicking on the raise hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if participating by phone. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
There are no public comments.
Okay, thank you. The public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? Commissioner Davis and then Commissioner Martinez, and if someone else can tell me if they see anybody on Zoom.
I just want to pay a compliment and say thank you for the robust information and the great presentation today. And just a side note that when I was at work the other day and I saw a teacher about to say something they weren't supposed to, I said, you don't want to mess with Miss Fitzgraffy. And I literally said that out loud. They looked at me like, ooh. And then I said, oh, never mind, but you don't. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis.
Commissioner Martinez.
Yeah, I appreciate this report, and that is really quite the workload. And it sounds like you're anticipating more. I'm curious, and this is like completely out of curiosity, is there like a industry standard for what is normal for how long it takes us to do these? And I don't know, like, what do we benchmark against? And similar to that, like, it sounds like, which is 100% understandable, it's not a criticism, that it almost takes a year from beginning to end, that last part you went through. Do we receive any complaints about the time that it takes?
The timeliness chart and how we've built it was based in historical process and due to the audit that DPP went through during the 2011 season. And we've set the benchmarks for a case that moves completely through from the day that we receive it in the system to the day commission approves it and it becomes effective. Throughout that time frame, there are statutory timelines. The initial review process, right? Then committee must review it in a formal review process. If they move it forward, that's 60 days in future. Then once formal review moves forward, then it's also the time frame to get it on commission's calendar. So a lot of the time frame that it moves through the system are time frames that we can't avoid. Those are built in statute. However, we do monitor all of the reports and casework that we're doing the first 180 days. Some of that time is built in, and in the chart, it will help kind of explain a little bit of the timeline. So the second and the third box in the timeliness chart, where it starts with document procurement to issuance of letter of inquiry. That is the time that 152 days is from the date we receive the record to the date the letter is noticed to the educator. That 150 days is the time it takes for my team to gather all of the records from the educator, criminal misconduct, school records. If it's a school misconduct, the evaluation of all the records that come through the door. So the first 180 days is really built on gathering records, evaluating those records, determining where we can move in the system to any of the commission's delegated policies, does this fit a single offense alcohol offense? Can we move it here? Then those are going to move closer. So this timeliness report is really capturing the cases where an adverse action is affected. So all of the cases that move and may get closed and granted prior to an adverse action, those are moving under that 349 days. So the longest time I want to keep somebody in my unit is that max capacity. And for us, we're trying to lessen that every year.
Well, thank you. It was a really informative report on the breadth and depth of the work you do. So thank you very much.
And I just want to say thank you as somebody who sometimes has to file reports, because they are extremely responsive in terms of like, do you want me to send the box of empty Scotch bottles we found, or is a picture sufficient? And it's those responses are very helpful in terms of us putting together the packet that we need to go to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Simmons and Commissioner Martinez. Commissioner Brown?
Thank you again to the staff. This is an amazing report with a lot of good information. I want to especially thank you for the conclusion and the bullets on page 10, because after going through all this, I really love the synopsis of things to pay attention to. So that was especially helpful for me. I did have a question about the table on page 2, which is new cases opened by report type. And I did notice that there is a pretty significant increase in the breach of contract cases. In my gut, think I kind of know maybe why it's going up. I mean, with the teacher shortage, with the context that many of my colleagues are working in right now is, difficult. It's really challenging. What I was wondering is, do we have any other additional information about that significant increase? For example, do we know, are those numbers occurring more in one geographic region or one district or in a certain credential type, or just more information about the what, the who, the where? Because if we as a community of educators want to respond to that significant increase, I think we need to know more about why it's happening. So just if we do, that's great. If we don't, maybe we could start collecting some of that information.
And I do have a response for that. Unfortunately, DPP doesn't evaluate the why. It comes into the door. It's noticed as a breach of contract, which is how it's cataloged at the time. The case moves through committee. Committee determines what happens after that point in time. So DPP simply presents the information, and they only have the authority over the individual. And so we aren't tracking necessarily the school district because we don't have any authority over that piece. So we don't have that data readily available to present.
Thank you for that question. Commissioner De La Torre and Chair Grenoshire.
I wanted to follow up on that comment from Commissioner Brown. So the breach of contract can be anything that breaches the contract, like showing up being tardy to work, or as extreme as not showing up to work at all. I don't understand. What is breach of contract?
So a breach of contract is if the contract is in place and it is signed for the school year, if the school district determines that that individual has breached the contract for whatever reasons they've submitted, it gets reported to the division. So we don't make the determination as to the breach of contract, the school district or the county does.
So we don't know. We don't know the severity of whatever it might have been for each individual.
No, that is evaluated during committee. All the facts are forwarded to committee. They make the evaluation in their closed session.
So we do know.
And yeah, their closed session,
committee.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Grenoshire.
Thank you. I wanted to give gratitude to Ms. Grisafi for this comprehensive report. Again, every time you present, I am impressed with your depth of knowledge of the responsibilities in your unit. So thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Grenoshire. Other questions or comments? Well, I'm going to take this opportunity myself then to ask some questions and make some comments. Our wonderful outgoing Vice Chair, Maricel de la Torre Escobedo, yesterday in her remarks commented on the importance of this aspect of the work of the Commission. This is one of the three pillars of work that the Commission does, along with the credentialing work and the accreditation work, but it is, of course, work that is done outside of the public eye. And so I really appreciate this very thorough report, along with the reports we get each meeting. But this opportunity is the one opportunity in the year that the public really has to take a look, and we have a look to take. We have an opportunity to take a look together to monitor how we are doing in terms of the very critical mandate through the disciplinary work we have of protecting our school children, protecting the welfare of our profession, and also protecting the due process of credential holders. So I really appreciate all the work that's been put into here. And I do have a few individual questions since this is our big opportunity, and then a few more general questions. And so some of these are small in the data here, but I appreciate the indulgence since this is my one opportunity to do this, or being able to go through this. One question on, let's see, page 3A-2, when we're talking about new cases opened by report type. Why are there, for 2018 to 19, 2019 to 20, it says not applicable for subpoena? Could you explain, was there a change then, or why is it that we don't have any information for those?
The information that we have that we catalog is based on actual criteria that we use in the database. So until that time period at the fiscal year break of 2020, we created what we call a LOV, which is a list of value, which we're able to select in the data that allows us to actually capture that data. So that was created in that time frame, which allows us to now track those cases.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's wonderful that you are continuing to improve the way that we have the ability to track. I wanted to ask, so if the public makes a complaint, that comes in under the affidavit and complaints. Is that where that is captured?
Correct.
So when we see there were 211 complaints from members of the public, is that where those come in?
Correct.
Is there any, I was just curious, can you give us any sense of, is there any consistency or themes in what the public brings to our attention through these affidavits and complaints? Or is it just a wide range across the disciplinary issues that we see?
It's across the range of disciplinary issues. An affidavit and complaint can also be collected during trial from a witness or a victim. So we catalog, the way that these are cataloged is how the data is received to us initially. That gives us the jurisdiction to open our case and move forward. So the 211 are distinct in the fact that these affidavits and complaints came to the commission unsolicited. That created a case for us. The misconduct that they might submit, wide-ranging. And again, while we capture that in our casework, that information based on the confidentiality of the process and committee's closed session, I can't make a comment on the type of misconduct associated, but it's wide-ranging,
Okay, thank you. That is helpful. When we look at, let's see, which page? Oh, what types of the cases are opened by type of misconduct. on page 3A-3. Is this the one I was looking at? Oh, what was, I guess, concerned or interested in, there has been quite an increase in the number of serious crimes and felonies. So, I've been trying through these charts to look back to pre-COVID periods to try to, because the comparison is, I think, a little bit more applicable in that sense. But here we see not a return to sort of the pre-COVID level in terms of the serious crimes and felonies, but a big increase, which is not something we really want to see. Do you have any insights for us on what's going on there or why that's happening?
No, not in the sense of why those might be coming in the door, other than the sheer push for teacher shortage. So the more applications that come in the door, they're naturally going to cause cases and DPP to increase. And the serious crimes and felonies, and just to clarify, these categories, while they're very distinct for DPP, I know they look very general to outsiders, to the commissioners, to the public. So the way that we look at a case when it's coming through the door is the basis of the incident that has happened. It doesn't result in the outcome of the case. It doesn't result in anything. It's simply the pure view of what that initial misconduct was. And if there's multiple, we choose the most egregious one to code the case. So while maybe it's listed under serious crime or felony, maybe at the time the case moves through the system, it gets dropped down, it's no longer a felony, and the case gets adjudicated at a criminal level at a much lower level, where the case is open based on the initial report. So there's some variances when we're looking at the data in the sense of how we look at the misconduct. And that's because that's how we label our cases. That's how we move cases forward. That's how we determine, the threshold of a case when it's moving to a particular team. So they're coded with the most egregious code in our case file so that we make sure it gets moved to the appropriate team. And then then we follow the criminal case through its process until it gets adjudicated. So it's a snapshot in time. It doesn't really evoke the sense of the I'm trying to say this very clearly. While this is a snapshot in time, it's only a snapshot in time of the minute we open the case. And as we move through our case, we attempt to update it, but at the time that the numbers are captured, it's simply what was categorized at that time and not a basis of what happens at the end.
Thank you. That is illuminating. That is. I had a question also about no jurisdiction for formal review. Also, and the answer might be along the lines of what you've said, which is this is just evidence of the increase in applications. But I do see a pretty significant increase to 807 cases in 2022 to 23 versus 2018 to 19, 682. And that would raise concerns for me if for some reason there was an increase in cases we couldn't move forward with, where we thought that indeed there was concern in the conduct there. So can you tell me anything about that increase?
So, yes, it's very similar to what it's a snapshot in time. And these cases here, these are the final. So we may have started, and I'll use the serious crime felony as an example. So we may have started and it looked like a very terrible crime at the beginning and the onset with the report. We get the records, that moves through the trial. It goes through the criminal justice process. And at the end of the day, it gets settled at the criminal justice level. That removes our jurisdiction because maybe the case is dismissed. Maybe they're given deferred entry of judgment. They do a program. They do programs. I'm trying to think of the other. sorry, they usually complete programs or a community service or some other piece that the judge says, oh, maybe a one-off time that you had a really bad moment, and we're going to allow you to correct yourself, and we're not going to punish you forever, because a criminal, it lasts for a really long time on your record. So they do that and the case gets dismissed. So while we are following it the entire time and it looks like it's this really bad case, it ends up moving through the system and we get all the records that show, okay, well, it maybe wasn't as bad as it looked. And so we don't have the formal jurisdiction here because they've dismissed the case. So we have to just really follow it through its own process, because we don't want to move a case through the system where we don't have any formal jurisdiction for adverse action, and punish somebody that's taken care of their process at the beginning.
Got it. Thank you. That's also very helpful. I have one more specific data question and then just a couple of other questions. I notice in your chart where you're talking about how the matters are concluded, that there's a big decrease in matters that are concluded through consent determination. So 2018 to 19, 107 matters were concluded through consent determination. And 2022 to 23, 36 are concluded. I don't remember 2017 to 18 to remember if it was more in that 100. But I'm curious about that decline, if that's a change in policy and approach, if it's not something that we expect to see, or if it reflects something about how we're approaching cases, that there's so many fewer where the consent determination is coming out, a change through the ALJ process. Any illumination about that? Because that's a pretty big change.
Good morning, commissioners. I will respond to this because the consent determinations are something that is done by the Office of the Attorney General in conjunction with my office. So I don't want to talk about any privileged information here or give any legal advice, so I'm going to try to navigate this carefully. If I can remind you, our cases were housed in the Health, Education, and Welfare Division at the Office of the Attorney General. And in 2016, the cases were moved to the Licensure Division because of the backlog. So there was a lot going on in budget hearings about why are cases at the Office of the Attorney General not being prosecuted. And the HEW division is a defense-oriented division, and the licensure division is a prosecution division. So the cases were not properly placed and they were moved. And when that happened, there was a very high number of cases that were several years old, anywhere from 5 to 10 years old, that could not be prosecuted because we could not find witnesses, the evidence was stale. So there were several issues in terms of latches, I'm generalizing. So in late 2016, early 2017, the Assistant Chief Counsel, Katie Elliott, and I went through what was coming into licensing at that time and ended up having to settle a very, very high number of cases. So if you looked, I don't know what it was in 2016, 2017, and 2018, 2019, but those 2 years were very high settlement years for us because of the age of those cases. So in normal times, you're seeing the numbers in the next 4 fiscal years. So no, there's been no change to process. Our directives from you have been that, and if you change this directive, we will comply with it. But our directives from the commission have been that the attorneys are not to settle matters unless there's an evidentiary fatality. So if that changes, that would change the settlement posture of this body, but that is been consistent for the past 4 to 5 years, to my knowledge.
Okay, that's very helpful. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up, but I do have 2 quick questions and 1 request. The The first question for Ms. Gritzofi is, are there any other streamlining or efficiency or procedural changes that you have been discussing as desired within your team that you want us to consider? I know that, almost 10 years ago, there were some major changes in terms of the initial review. So this is our opportunity to check in with you to see if there's any process changes that you would like for us to consider.
Thank you. Currently, the processes and procedures that we have, we're looking at streamlining with technology that will help speed up paperless, the ease of an updated system to what we have currently. So we're building it to the specs of how we can move our data faster and with the hybrid workforce to allow us to move. Right now, we carry physical files with us around the building. And until we can get to a more streamlined technical perspective on how we do our casework, that's our moment right now. That's what we're working at. Because once we can get there, then we know where we can streamline a process or a procedure in it itself.
Thank you. That's very helpful to know that effort is underway, and any support that you need, I hope you will bring that to us in your meeting level reports. My second question is the same one I ask at those times, which is, do you have any concerns about staffing level to keep up with the increase anticipated from the increase in applicants altogether? And as you noted in the report, the increase in number of credential holders we're going to need to have to accommodate our new TK programs.
We are actively reviewing staffing at all times. Currently, we've had a staffing, I don't want to say a turnover because these folks have worked in our agency for decades, but have since retired. So we have had 3 retirements over the past 6 months, with the latest being at the end of September. So we are actively hiring and training those new folks. With that comes knowledge base and teaching them the historical pieces, which does take a little bit longer. So we do find that we are working, and the folks that we are hiring picking up very quickly. They're excelling far past my expectation. And in those timeframes, we're doing that accelerated training for that reason, so that we can keep those numbers to make sure that they don't pivot one direction or another. While I expect there to be some fluctuation for that reason, yes, but our team is, we knew those retirements were coming. We had everything planned and prepped. Those folks are hiring. From our retirement into September, we have a new person starting already November 1. So we're moving as quickly as possible to backfill any open positions when that occurs. And currently staffing is at an appropriate level for the numbers that we have and that we're managing. We have a 3 to 4 month workload in the pipeline, which is a baseline for what we've had over the past 10 years. And so as long as we keep that threshold of workload, we still have the opportunity to maneuver some of the cases at initial review, which will allow that number to decrease. So we have we have room. We still have room. So, but we're actively always monitoring that. I'm keeping track of the incoming workload. I'm not the best statistician, but I'm learning how these numbers evolve and move, especially with the new incoming and the push for teacher shortage and the pre-K TK. So we're actively evaluating all those pieces. So right now, we feel we're busy. We're busy is the best word I can say is we're busy, and my team understands the expectation is 110%, 8 hours a day. Go home and enjoy your family, take a break, right? The workload that we do is extreme in the terms of, bandwidth of emotion for the types of cases that we review. So I expect they have a rest and a break, but while they're here and they have 8 hours, that's the expectation, and they're prepared.
Well, thank you to you and to the team. I mean, the reality and the reputation of the commission rest, greatly on the work that you do and the effort over the last 10 years following the audit to create such consistency in the timeliness and the quality of our procedures is so important. One final request for an addition of information, if this would be possible in the next annual report, which would be, and tell me if this is in here and I can't see this, but if it would be possible for us to show how many of the decisions issued by the commission are adoption of proposed ALJ decisions versus issuance of new decisions. That is information that would be of interest to me. And tell me if that's already in the report. And if it is possible to do a backward, if it is possible to include that, and then would be possible to do that looking retrospectively as you do for the 5 years prior, I would appreciate that information. I think it would be very useful for our understanding of our process.
Okay, and I just want to clarify, you're looking for information regarding adopted decisions versus a new decision.
Yeah.
Okay. One thing I want to comment on is with the data that we have here, as I indicated before, with the subpoena category, is because if it's not in our current list of values or a drop down, basically, in the system that we currently have, then it has never been categorized in that fashion. So while I can look at seeing if we can categorize it like that and it be data that we can capture appropriately, then I can absolutely work on that piece. I'm a little bit concerned with the timeline in the sense because I cannot go backwards.
Understood. I don't want to create extra effort for that, but I think it's useful information for us in terms of our decision making. Okay, thank you so much. This is our one time a year that we get to dig into this very important work, and so I appreciate the time that we've taken. I know there's a lot on the agenda, but this is our one time every year that we get to really dig into this. So thank you for all the great questions by the commissioners. Thank you, Ms. Gritzofi, and to your team for answering all of our questions.
Thank you.
This is an information item and no action is needed. This concludes the business before the Professional Practices Committee. The committee is adjourned.
Thank you.
Next is the Legislative Committee. Vice Chair de la Torre Escobedo, will you please convene the committee?
I now convene the Legislative Committee. The committee has one item before it today. Item 4A, Status of Legislation, is an information item that is available as an agenda insert. Jonathan Howard will present this item. Mr. Howard, good morning. Will you please begin?
Is it still morning? Morning, commissioners. It's a pleasure to be with you here today. As I stated in my August presentation to the commission, the legislature has recessed for the remainder of this year. They will return for the second half of the 23-24 legislative session on January 3rd, 2024. The governor has been busy approving or vetoing legislation since the recess. He has until the 14th, tomorrow, to act on bills. In California, if the governor does not veto a bill, it will become law. Bills that are signed or enacted will become effective on January 1st, 2024, unless they contain an urgency clause. The governor has signed into law the following bills that I have been tracking this year. SB 223, which allows local education agencies to offer prep programs for pupil personnel service credentials, and AB 934, which requires the Commission on Teacher Credentialing to develop a public awareness campaign related to teacher recruitment. Details on those bills are in the packet. There are still a number of bills we are tracking that the governor has yet to act on. If the commission desires, I'm happy to send an update after the deadline has passed and we know the final disposition of all these bills. You will have noticed in the packet that many of the bills on are labeled carryover bills and two-year bills. A carryover bill is one that was introduced. We're going to get a little in the weeds here, so please bear with me. Introduced in the first year of a legislative session and made it out of its house of origin but was not passed to the governor's desk in that first year. It may be acted on until the end of the second year of a legislative session. Carryover bills are usually, but not always, taken up in the second half of the second year of a legislative session. A 2-year bill is a bill introduced in the first year of a legislative session that did not make it out of its house of origin. In order for these 2-year bills to remain active, they must be passed to the other house by January 31st, 2024. And this concludes my report. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions that commissioners have about the bills in the packet or any others they might have.
Okay, we will now open for public comment. If there are members of the public that would like to give a presentation, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or clicking on the raise hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if participating by phone. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
There are no public comments.
Thank you. The public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? Yes, Commissioner Davis.
Well, you had your hand up first. You want to go first? Okay. We're being very kind with the platitudes this morning. I wanted to say thank you to Mr. Howard again for giving us all this beautiful information about the legislation. It's not often framed as beautiful, but there have been some recent bills that have been signed at the governor's office that have made it very easy, much easier in our LEAs to do our day-to-day operations, like the extension of the 30-day sub-permit. Like that was like a really big deal. And I want to say thank you to Mr. DeGear for keeping me updated, and Ms. Hickey for your work in the background as well, because a lot of this, a lot of what we're doing here around this table is like really taking shape at the ground level, in classrooms, in our schools, and are really affecting our students. And we appreciate you looking out for that legislation.
Commissioner Klatt.
Thank you. I have a question about AB 1255. And it's similar to a question I asked you last time about this bill, but I'm going to refine my question a little bit. I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer it yet. But that it's the bill about ethnic studies, and it states in the proposed language that currently social studies teachers are qualified to teach ethnic studies. And my question about that is that the CDE Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum Guide includes courses that appear to be courses taught within an English department or an arts department. And so my first question is, right now, are only social studies teachers allowed to teach the ethnic studies courses? Or does this bill assume that that's the case? Or is that the case that it's going to be that way? And depending on the answer, I might have some follow-up question. And I see reinforcements.
I think I could answer it, but I'm going to let the content expert.
So right now, with the credential structure, the subject of ethnic studies is subsumed within the social sciences credential. So that is the credential that would teach a course that is identified as an ethnic studies course. Now, that's not to say that ethnic studies content could not appear in other courses that are within the English or arts categories. And so if ethnic studies content is within an English course and it's reported to the state as an English course, it would have ethnic studies content in it that would be able to be taught by an English teacher. So it just really depends on what is being reported for that course. Talk about getting into the weeds. I could really get into the weeds with this, but a course's primary content would be what we would expect it to be reported under. So if it's an English course with ethnic studies content within it, we'd expect it to be reported as an English course. If it's an ethnic studies course with a focus with English content woven into it, then we'd expect it to be reported as an ethnic studies course. So it just depends on how it's reported.
So follow-up question then, as an upcoming graduation requirement that students take a semester of an ethnic studies course, would, let's say, the English or the arts class that has the ethnic studies content, would that course work for the student's requirement to take a semester of ethnic studies, even if it was taught by an arts teacher, a science teacher, an English teacher? Or is that more a CDE question?
I think that's a CDE question. I don't know. I don't think we can answer that question because it depends on what CDE requires as that course being reported to them.
Okay, because, and then I guess my comment or concern is that this could create a lot of confusion and difficulty in how schools, as this ethnic studies requirement comes up, many schools are already offering courses like this, but it's not a requirement yet. But when it's a requirement, we're going to see, I think, a lot more of these courses. And so if we're not clear, or if we don't know who can teach these courses, because there's some really intriguing model courses in the CDE model curriculum guide. But if those courses don't satisfy the ethnic studies requirement, that could be really problematic. And so I'm concerned about that disconnect that's written into the law right now, as I see it. And as kind of to go along with that, I know that the law includes the stakeholder group for relevant stakeholders for the task force. And a social studies teacher is included in that task group, but no other teachers. So for me, there's a lot of questions on this bill. So I just want to express those concerns. I don't know what we might be able to do about that, or if that's going to require cooperation among entities. But to me, this is going to be really challenging to figure out, and it's coming soon. So I'll stop there.
Commissioner Simmons, did you have your hand up?
In terms of supplementary authorization, what would appropriate options be for us if, let's say, Bonnie wanted to teach a ethnic studies course that was largely an English course, but was designed to meet that requirement?
So if an English teacher wanted to add a supplementary authorization that would cover them to teach ethnic studies, they would have to get the introductory social sciences supplementary authorization at this time.
Go ahead, Commissioner Clark.
I just want to add on that I think, especially for smaller schools, looking at a master schedule and trying to assign sections, that could be really challenging to find teachers who are qualified to teach that course, and students will be required to take it to graduate. And if a school can't find that appropriately credentialed person to teach, again, it might only be 1 or 2 sections of a contract. So you might not be able to hire a full-time ethnic study, someone who holds that ethnic studies credential for that 1 or 2 sections of the day that you're teaching it. That if, yeah, I guess it's my consternation is obvious. I guess
If I may, unless Commissioner Cotton can answer the question, we can follow up with CDE.
Yes, and we do need to follow up a little bit more with staff, but given the models that are in the ethnic studies model curriculum, yes, those courses do qualify for graduation requirement. I think that it does take a little bit deeper look between CDE and CTC just to confirm that. They're having conversations about an ethnic studies credential. I mean, there's all of those conversations that have been in existence as well. But as it stands, the courses that are recommended in the ethnic studies model curriculum guide would meet those graduation requirements, as would existing courses that LEAs are teaching and using as well. It's super exciting. Yeah.
And if I could also just clarify, there are permits that exist to cover any teacher who's fully credentialed and needs to teach outside of their primary certification area. So they can immediately be placed in those assignments with their employer requesting a GLAP, General Education Limited Assignment Permit, and they can renew that permit up to 2 additional times. So there's pathways forward for folks right now while we're kind of having these conversations. And also from the commission's perspective, if those ethnic studies model curriculum courses include both English and ethnic studies content, and they're categorized with a primary content of English, but they do count for the ethnic studies graduation requirement, we have zero qualm with that. That is a perfectly appropriate assignment. We would look for that English teacher because it is an English course that meets the ethnic studies requirement because it's foundationally includes that ethnic studies content. So, but we'll have more conversations about that for sure.
I just want to add that as the ethnic studies graduation requirement bill is written, the local education agency has the ultimate decision on what is and is not an ethnic studies course. The law recommends that they use the model curriculum as created by CDE and approved by the State Board of Education, but they can adopt any course as long as they have had meetings on it and there's a 2/3 vote majority and say it is an ethnic studies course. So ultimately, if an LEA says this course is an ethnic studies course, whether its focus be in social sciences or in arts or in literature, if the school board has said this is our ethnic studies course, and if you read EdSource, you will see that there are already issues arising over this, where schools have said this is our ethnic studies course, or this is a valid ethnic studies course, and there have been lawsuits. So this is playing out in a lot of places.
Thank you.
So everybody, there's several people in the queue. I have you all written down here. Chair Grinnell-Shire.
Thank you. I was going to suggest that, and I think it was Commissioner Klatt and Commissioner Cotton who converged on this, that we take these questions that are being raised regarding implementation and we have staff follow up with CDE and then come back to help inform the commission. Once again, I'm a little bit worried about our time, not to cut off people, but it's 11:20. So if we could ask staff to follow up, I would appreciate that.
Commissioner Brown. Commissioner Brown.
Two bills here, AB 1555 and 1106, that are around early childhood and transitional kindergarten, are both carryover bills. Can you just remind me again that if it's a carryover bill, it means that the bill is going nowhere now, right?
It means it got out of its house of origin. It's still eligible to be worked on. It will most likely happen in the later half of next year when all the bills that are going to be introduced at the beginning of 24 also switch over to the other house. So they're sitting, waiting to be acted upon.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Cotton, did you have something to add?
Just final comment on ethnic studies until we can sit down and talk, because we strongly encourage folks to refer back to the ethnic studies model curriculum and use that as a guidance as they're moving forward with this work. That's all. Thank you.
And then Commissioner Klatt, are you good? Okay. Commissioners, any further comments or questions? Yeah, Commissioner Cardenas.
I just had a question about SB 223 that was signed into law. As a former child welfare and attendance counselor, what implications does this have for LEAs?
Yes, I will take that. So this bill was actually sponsored by Los Angeles Unified School District. They're finding that they have a number of people who have the older pupil services credentials and want to now add the CWA. So it will allow LEAs who have an approved preparation program to offer just the CWA credential or authorization.
Yes, Commissioner Heredia.
So thank you for this update. I always get excited about seeing what's moving and what's not. I would appreciate an update when the bills are, bills are finalized and see which ones are signed and not signed. So thank you for offering that.
Any others? Okay, everybody. This is an information item and no action is necessary. Thank you so much, Mr. Howard, and thank you, Ms. Scooble as well. Having no additional items today, I adjourn the Legislative Committee.
Thank you, Vice Chair De La Torre Escobedo. And I know that you're going to be running out here pretty soon. And so I just want to take one more opportunity to thank you for your leadership and your service and your grace during these meetings. I'm really going to miss you a lot.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, everybody.
Item 1H is new business. The bi-monthly agenda is presented for information. Next on the agenda is audience presentations. If there are members of the public that would like to give a presentation, please notify the meeting moderator by clicking on the raised hand icon if participating through Zoom or pressing *9 if participating by phone. Recording Secretary, are there any audience presentations?
Yes, there are. Steve McDougall.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Commissioner, staff, Steve McDougall representing CFT today. 23 years ago, today was also Friday the 13th. My son was born. There's more likelihood that I have the Powerball winning ticket than he watching today, but happy birthday, Doug. Also, seriously, Commissioner Wicks, Salinas Union, Workforce Housing, very good salary schedule. Just go single subject and we've got you. And send your friends our way as well. But all kidding aside, folks, there's a concern that has been brought to my attention by multiple CFT leaders and educational issues committee folks about a looming gap with credential holders who are eligible to teach designated ELD classes. Currently, the folks coming out of the candidates coming out of their credential programs that are accredited, they can only teach ELs in their designated subject matter courses only. They are restricted from teaching self-contained ELD classes for English learners by themselves. And that is a problem because the only folks that are left to teach those are, I don't want to use the O word, but they're getting very long in the tooth and seasoned, if you know what I mean. And once they go out to pasture, who's left to teach them? 20-day substitutes for the students who generate the most revenue in LCFF, supplemental concentration money. We're not going to have staffing for them. That's just not okay. We have to fix that. There are only 5 accredited programs to teach the world languages ELD credential to provide it. 2 up here in this area, Jessup University, which has some controversy, and of course, the Fortune School in LEA. And then down south, we have USC, Fullerton, and Santa Barbara. There are no others. There aren't that many programs. I dare say most of them are cost prohibitive, except for the CSU one, depending on your economic circumstances anyways. Who's going to get these folks, get these credentials and teach our students who need to take that class by requirement until they redesignate as English learners? This is a problem that needs to be addressed. We need more programs. We need more folks in those programs. And the situation is just going to hit a critical mass before too long over time. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing this shortage area to our attention. We appreciate you. Recording Secretary, are there any other audience presentations?
Emma Bell.
Hello, commissioners. My name is Emma Bell. I'm a 6-year teacher in the Sacramento area. And I would like to propose an idea that I think would be mutually beneficial for those in the process of obtaining their credentials, as well as teachers in the classroom. I'm not actually sure the exact route or individual to contact that might be best to facilitate this idea, so I'm starting here. My idea is to include a certain number of substitute days as part of the requirements for the credential program. A significant contributing factor to teacher burnout is the inability to call out sick and simply rest when ill. It is difficult and often not possible to find a substitute teacher on short notice. And even if a sub is available, the teacher is still tasked with writing subnotes, working while they are using sick time to be resting. Or all too often, dragging themselves into work sick because they don't want to burden their colleagues. By requiring credential program students to complete a number of substitute hours, it would increase the substitute pool as well as provide credential program students with experiences in different schools, districts, grade levels, subjects, etc., as well as additional income during the financially challenging process of working as a student teacher. The second part of my idea is to share or provide a bank of lessons for each grade level and subject made available to substitutes, which would eliminate the need for a teacher to write last-minute plans when they're not well enough to attend work. This would allow teachers to be sick and heal, as well as provide a credential program students with valuable experience and income.
Thank you for your ideas. Recording Secretary, are there any other audience presentations?
No requests.
Thank you. I will now recess the general session. Members of the commission will go into closed session. The general session will reconvene after the closed session. Commissioners, if I could just ask you to stay where you are for a few minutes. Thank you. Rhonda, can I ask you to let me know when folks have cleared the commission room, please?
Hello, can you hear me? Closed session, we will use another different link, so which I send you guys.
Yes.
So this, we need to close our open session. Go on another room link for the closed session part.
I thought I just recessed the general session. That's what I thought that's what I did. What I'm asking is let me know when there's only commissioners in the room.
Okay.
I think, Madam Chair, that that staff is just, we are still live and broadcasting. So so if you just want to have a quick word with commissioners about lunch and schedule,
That's what I want to do. Yeah.
I think that's fine for just remember that we are in a live broadcast still.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Thank you, Executive Director Sandy. That was my intention. Commissioners, it is 11:33. I wonder if you want to make this a working lunch, and by that I mean go grab something, come back 12:05, 12:10. Does that work for people? And I can't read the room from where I'm at, so let's see.
Are you guys okay?
Yes.
12:10?
Yes.
Okay.
It looks like everybody's in
Metasol's
agreement.
still there. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know
Yeah, I'm
Metasol's
packing up.
still there. Okay, good.
I'm just not going to leave, Mark.
Yeah, watch what you say.
Just kidding.
Oh, I wish you would stay. So does 12:10 sound good to reconvene?
12:10 sounds good to everybody.
Okay.
Yes.
And for those of us on Zoom, Haju has sent another link. So I will see everyone at 12:10.
Perfect.
Bye, Marisol.
Bye. Bye. And I'll call you right now, Marquita.
Okay. Okay. Bye. Yes.
I just emailed you I just emailed you the minutes.
Okay. I will let you know when I have them. Thank you. Okay. Are folks back in the room, Vanessa?
Yes, we have a quorum.
Thank you. I would like to reconvene the general session and move to agenda item 1, report of closed session items. I just have to pull it up, excuse me. Closed session items for October 12th, 13th, 2023. The commission denied the following petitions for reinstatement. 1, Jacoby Hammond. 2, Sam Atherton. 3, Aaron Nessman. The commission adopted the decision and order in the following matters. Samuel Agifosu Gossman, Christopher Sino, David Keck, Staran Myers. Commissioner Susan Heredia recused herself from this matter. Number 5, Maurice Myers. Number 6, Morgan Walton. Number 7, Curtis Williams. The commission reviewed the transcripts in the following matters, and a decision and order will be prepared for the commission's adoption. The commission ordered a 30-day delay for preparation of the decision and order. Number 1, Raman Buckman. 2, Sarah Chapman. 3, Daryl Gideon. 4, Kevin Hernandez. 5, Lara Rankin. 6, Douglas Rennick. 7, Carolyn Warren. 8, Stacy Weatherman. 9, Jonathan Wright. The commission rejected the following proposed decisions and called for the transcripts. John Klaus, Commissioner Christopher Davis recused himself from this matter. Diane Colgate, Tara Gutierrez, Jonathan Masiska, Lydia Morales, and Cornelius Ogunsalu. The commission denied the motion to vacate and sustained its prior decision in the matter of Lisa Fisher. The commission discussed the following consent calendar items and accepted the recommendation of the Committee of Credentials. Louise Cordoville, Commissioners Michael De La Torre and Bonnie Klatt recused themselves on this item. Michael Kundari, Craig Evenhouse. The commission discussed the following consent calendar items and remanded the matters back to the Committee of Credentials. Stacy Bricks, Jimmy Durham, Commissioner Bonnie Klatt recused herself on this item. Clifford Mitchell and Ernest Segala. I now adjourn the October 2023 meeting of the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. The next meeting is on December 8th, 7th, and 8th, 2023. Thank you.
Thank you.
Woo! Thank you all.
Thanks, Marquita.
Thank you, Chair Granarshire.
Take good care, everyone.
I'll see you November 3rd.
Yes, you will, Commissioner Davis. Safe travels, everyone. Thank you, Mary.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.